My division of Gen Zers, 1996 to 2009. Is 2011 Gen Z or Gen Alpha? Can people actually shut up about if 2010 through 2012 is Gen Alpha or not? Is 2010 through 2012 Gen Z or Gen Alpha? Does Gen Z end at 2009 or 2012? Because I have seen both. I'm 2010 and I don't want to be associated with risful skibidi-giga chads. Gen Z starts 1997 and a Gen is 15 years, so 1997 plus 15 equals 2012. Kids born in 2010 after saying that Gen Alpha starts in 2013 just so they don't have to be a part of it. Why is 2010 considered Gen Alpha? It's literally Gen Z. Unless you've been living under a rock, you've probably seen the huge debate online that's splitting the internet about whether Gen Z ended in 2009 or 2012. To be clear, when I say 2009 and 2012, I'm talking about the final year of Gen Z, not the first year of Gen Alpha. The years are inclusive, meaning Gen Z would end at 2009 or 2012, depending on which side you're on. If you clicked on this video, you probably fall into one of the two groups. Group 1, you believe Gen Alpha is 2010 to 2024, and Gen Z ends in 2009, and you're thinking, bruh, those little kids are too young to be part of Gen Z. Or Group 2, you're a kid who was born between 2010 and 2012, and you want to be considered Gen Z like the older Gen Zers. And honestly, who could blame you? Nobody wants to be lumped in with those weird iPad kids, but hey, if you do, well then, you do. I won't judge that. The 1995 to 2009 range is known as the McCrindle range, and on the other hand, the 1997 to 2012 range is known as the Pew Research range. These are the two mainstream ranges for Gen Z, but there are some obscure less-known ones, like 2000 to 2015. Also known as the Jason Dorsey's range. Anyway, back to McCrindle and Pew Research. Out of the two, McCrindle was actually the first to define the ranges of Gen Z and Gen Alpha, with their research being first published in 2008, while Pew's ranges came out in early 2018. But this does not mean McCrindle is old and outdated. Generational definitions aren't like technology or become obsolete over time. In fact, McCrindle still makes articles and books about their research. There is also a rumor floating around that marks at the start of Gen Alpha 2010 because of the iPad. I want to debunk this real quick. So this isn't true because he pointed out that it's the same year the iPad came out, which doesn't mean he set it to 2010 because of the iPad. Okay, now that we've covered the origins of both ranges and debunked some things, let's take a look at the sources supporting each side. Here's a list of 20 credible sources that support the 1995 to 2009 range for Gen Z, and or the 2010 to 2024 range for Gen Alpha. Feel free to pause to look through them. And here are 20 credible sources that agree with the Pew range. Both the McCrindle range and the Pew range have a lot of sources supporting them. However, the McCrindle range seems to have a slight edge. Why? Because these sources tend to be more clear, consistent and a little easier to verify. The Pew range on the other hand, I actually had a much harder time fetching 20 sources than with McCrindle. Not only that, a handful of the sources were either vague about the exact timeline, overlap with other ranges, or don't exclusively support it. This did happen with McCrindle, but I noticed this more with the Pew Research timeline sources. So anyway, that's one point toward the McCrindle range. Next we will compare the impact of global events. Both of these ranges seem to be shaped by major real-world events. So the McCrindle range seems more focused on the rise of social media, smart devices, and the aftermath of the 2008 financial crisis. The Pew Research range on the other hand has its own set of social markers, like the COVID-19 lockdown, and the explosion of TikTok trends. In terms of social markers and real-world events, both ranges make sense, at least in my opinion. I'll give both ranges a point and call this one a tie. Well, technically McCrindle wins, I guess. I know what you guys may be thinking. You're probably like, you're only going by 2 factors? Yes, for the sake of keeping this video short, we're sticking with those 2 factors. I am aware that there are more considerations, but the 2 I used are the main significant ones. Now that I established this, the rest of the video will be my opinion. I just want to say, everyone can have different viewpoints for literally anything, and I personally think Gen Z ended in 2009, because most people seem to agree that Gen Beta starts in 2025, or started, depending on when I can release this video. Anyway, not only do people agree that 2025 and later is Gen Beta, they also agree a generation is 15 years. And doing some basic subtraction, 2025 minus 15 is 2010. Following this, Gen Alpha would start in 2010. And regarding my point from earlier, for those of you born between 2010 and 2013 trying to be a part of Gen Z, you do you. But consider this. You're disregarding a huge part of your own generation just because you're embarrassed by them. I know I made a joke about iPad kids at the start, but by trying so hard to distance yourself, you're unintentionally telling them they should be embarrassed about when they were born, just like you are. Why? What's the goal? You're so desperate to fit into Gen Z, despite the fact that they, some, not all of them, are the ones making fun of you. But here's the truth. Being a part of Generation Alpha won't stop you from having a family, a great career, or a fulfilling life. Your generation has the potential to be better than the ones that came before. Gen Alpha can achieve so much if you'd stop hyperfixating on a label that honestly, you'll rarely even mention outside of the internet. Embrace who you are. There's so much more to your identity than a generational label. By the way, I kind of think Gen Alpha is cool because it is actually the beginning of a new generational name rule. Gen Z and before were regular letters, Gen Alpha and onward are Greek letters. Anyway, that's a wrap for this video. So that was the big debate on Gen Z's start and end dates. If this video offended you or something, respectfully, what am I supposed to say? The end date for Gen Z and start date for Gen Alpha has been and still is very fuzzy right now, and there is no completely accepted range. But I'm curious about what you guys think. Do you think Gen Z ends at 2009 or 2012? Write your opinions in the comments below.